It was not Naruto, but his sister Mito Namikaze that held the nine tails. Born 5 years before the attack, he was abandoned and forgotten by his parents in favor of his younger sister, the child of prophecy. After his disownment, he leaves only to be discovered by a certain resistance leader. He finds his true home in Kiri. But do things ever stay good forever? Hey everyone, I hope you're well. This is the story about what if Naruto was neglected and became a Mist Shinobi. Before we start, please subscribe to the channel and like the video as well. So without any further ado, let's start the what if. Thank you all for coming to Mito's 8th birthday. It is with great pleasure that my wife and I announce Mito Uzumaki Namikaze as our heir. The voice of Minato Namikaze said aloud, getting clapping from the audience, the clan children all crowding around Mito looking at her gifts. Jiraiya allowing Mito to sign the Toad contract when she became a genin, while Tsunade decided to take her on as her new apprentice since Shizune learned all she knew and then some. Kushina gushed at her baby hole talking to the other clan wives. The party was in full swing and all were having a good time. Sitting at the foot of the top stairs was 13-year-old Naruto, who was now pale white, tears pouring from his eyes. He clenched his fist so hard blood came out. So they finally did it, huh? Fuck them then, I'm gone, thought the bitter preteen as he got up and packed what little he had, as well as the jutsus he copied from his former family's library as well. Once packed, he made his way out the window and headed out of the village. Naruto used to be loved, but at 5 years old, it was announced his parents were expecting a little girl, and slowly they began to forget about him, not calling him down to eat, of waking him up in the mornings. Whenever he tried to talk to them, they looked at him like he was an annoyance. Short answers and lies were all he heard. Eventually he stopped trying to talk to them and they forgot about his existence altogether. He became bitter and angry. He swore he would never let them in and began forging his own path. This continued as the years went on. Then when the attack happened, things changed again. A man in a mask took the Biju and tried to destroy the village. Naruto, using his intelligence, delayed the attack, allowing Minato time to fight him and seal the Biju into his daughter. Once again no credit was given to Naruto, and soon enough after the village heard the news, he was seen as a failure. This destroyed his faith in the village and never trusted it again, and now with his birthright being taken from him, he had no reason to stay there anymore, no friends either, so it was an easy decision to make. He made his way out of the front gates. Seeing the guards asleep at the job, he walked out. Taking one last look, he sneered at the village. I hope this place burns to the ground, he said as he walked off down the path. It would be many years before he ever stepped foot in this village again. 5 long years passed after that night. The village went about its day as if nothing had happened. The day after he was gone was when his family had come back to their senses, but by then was too late for them now. Flashback to the next day. It was a quiet morning at the Namikaze house. Minato and Kushina had woken up early to get their day started, but something kept bugging them. Something in the back of their minds told them something was off, but they couldn't figure out what, so they let it go for now as they heard Mito and Jiraiya come downstairs. Ohio, the couple said. Ohio, Ka-chan, Tucson, Mito replied while Jiraiya nodded, still tired with a slight hangover. They sat at the table and breakfast was served. They ate and talked about last night, smiling about the whole thing, when Minato spoke up. Oh, that reminds me, this year's graduations are today. I need to make up teams for them, he said. Another year, huh? Well, we have some good ones this year, like Itachi-kun or Hana-chan, Kushina said after eating. I can't wait to graduate and become Hokage, Dadabayo, Mito said proudly. They all smiled at her, finishing up and getting ready to head out, Minato taking Mito to school, Jiraiya heading out to do research. Once in his office, he began looking over the students. Some were excellent, others not so much, till he reached the last file, his oldest son's. He furrowed his brows as he knew nothing about his son. He hadn't spent time with him since he was 5. This made his eyes shoot open wide. Oh dear, Kami, my son, was all he said. At the same time, Kushina was in her bedroom, looking at her bookshelf, when she noticed her family photo album. For some reason she opened it up to see her loving husband and adorable little girl, but she flipped it back to the first page and she gasped in shock. It was of her with Minato and Naruto, her firstborn, her little Sochi. She began to think back, but she couldn't remember too much with him recently, no real interactions with him, no real bonding time. Fear set in her heart as she realized she hadn't spent time with him since he was 5. Putting the book down, she went to look for her oldest. Something in her brain flipped and she needed to see him. She needed to apologize for everything. Only problem was she didn't know which was his room. Have a compound had over 10 bedrooms, so she set out to look through them all. But each one was empty. She became a bit more frantic. "Naruto, are you here?" "Sochi?" she called out. No reply. Finally she came to the last room at the end. She was afraid. Would he be angry with her? How would she be able to apologize to him? When she was in front of the door, Minato appeared there as well, looking at his wife with growing concern. "Kushi-chan," he spoke. "Minato, I think this is Naruto's room," she said as she opened the door, but it was empty, a bed with a desk and a dresser, nothing else, as the wall where a sad gray color dust was everywhere, looking like it hadn't been lived in a long time. Kushina began having a panic attack, looking through everything hoping to find a trace of him, but nothing. Tears set in her eyes as she looked around. "Minato, he is not here. Where is he?" she said, frantic. Suddenly two Anbu appeared. "It appears your son was caught leaving the village last night by a civilian. He walked out the front gates," the Nico said. They looked at her with wide eyes. "Find my son now," he said to them. They nodded, disappearing. Kushina began sobbing, while Minato held her as they walked back downstairs. "Why did he leave?" she asked, confused. He looked at her for a moment, trying to think about it. "I don't know." He stopped and his eyes widened. "Last night during the party, we forgot it was his birthday too and gave his birthrights to Mito," he said in a moment of clarity. Her face went pale. "Oh my God, Minato, we disowned our baby," she yelled hysterically, now completely horrified by her actions. She couldn't take it and cried. Minato was trying to think on anything else, but nothing. The couple headed back to the office, where he summoned Anbu to track down his son. Slumping in his chair, "Where are you, Naruto?" he asked aloud. Naruto was in water country, trying to navigate through the mist. He was angry and just didn't care. Off in the distance he heard shouting and made his way there quickly. Finally, clear enough, he saw a woman in her early 20s fighting against about 5 other Mist Nin, and she was losing badly. Mei Terumi was angry her comrades had betrayed her to Yagura. Now she was in a predicament: either surrender and become a slave or die in battle and lose the war. But none of that happened when she saw a kid no older than 13 race at them with an impressive taijutsu style. Took the first 2 in one hit. As the other were distracted, she used her Yotan bloodline, burned another 2 alive as Naruto snapped the last one's neck. The women taking a couple deep breaths, she looked at the kid who helped her. He had her style of hair, an off-red color. But his eyes were like the ocean, deep blue, but had a void to them, like he has never seen happiness in his life. All she saw was anger, betrayal, and bitterness. "Hello, who are you?" she asked. "Naruto Uzumaki." "Who are you?" he said in kind, with a tired sigh. She smiled at him, her green eyes showing kindness to him. "My name is Mei Terumi, and I want to thank you for saving me. But why are you here? Shouldn't you be home with your family?" she asked. "Don't have one, I'm an orphan. Besides, there's nothing in that village for me anyways. There, I'm a failure," he spat angrily. She was taken aback by this, especially since he started tearing up. "It's not fair. What did she have that I didn't?" he whispered as he lowered his head and began crying, all that pent-up anger and aggression washing away. She was shocked by this. Whatever had happened to this boy must have been bad. Without thinking, she reached out to him and pulled him into her chest as he sobbed, petting his head, in a motherly tone which kind of surprised her. He latched onto her like a lifeline. As he cried, it hurt him badly. They forgot about him, left him to fend for himself, treated him like an inconvenience, and gave away his birthright. What had he done to deserve this? It didn't matter anymore. They made it clear they didn't want him, so he would never see them as family again. He finally calmed down and looked up at the lady he saved, his tear-stained face present to see. She looked at him sadly. He looked like such a good kid, and very handsome too. "Well, since you don't have a home, would you like to come home with me? I always wanted a son," she said, closing her eyes with a smile. His lip quivered. "Do you mean that?" He was afraid to hope. She nodded to him and kissed the top of his head. "Yes, I will adopt you and you will be my son. Come, let's go, we have a war to win for Kiri," she said, standing up. Wiping away his tears, he nodded. Then let's do it, Mom, he said to her, genuinely smiling for the first time in years. She smiled at him, hearing that made her feel tingly at the thought. They began heading to the Resistance's base of ops. So Naruto-kun, what do you know? She asked. I'm decent at taijutsu. I know several water jutsu, fire jutsu, earth jutsu. I know 3 wind jutsu and 1 lighting jutsu. I also know fuin jutsu and kenjutsu as well, he stated to her. She stopped to look at him, her eyes widened in shock. You have all 5? She asked. He whipped out some chakra paper and put his into it. Mei then watched as it split into 4 pieces. One top side became drenched, the other crinkled, while one bottom side burnt to a crisp while the other crumbled to dust. He smirked at her confidently. Yup, he said, popping the P at the end. She just laughed at him and they continued on. Flashback ends. Minato sent teams to look for his son, but they never found a trace of him. Jiraiya found 2 leads, one heading to Kumo, the other to Iron Country, but found nothing after that. Eventually he gave it up, much to Kushina's heartbroken dismay, while Mito became angry at her brother, for being selfish and hurting their family, not realizing they were no longer siblings, so she trained hard so if she met him one day she would beat him and force him to come back and apologize for his selfishness. At the same time, Mei and the rebels won the war, in large part to Naruto, his teaching of Fuinjutsu, which helped take down Yagura, which they found out he was being controlled but his mind was far too gone, so killing him and releasing the 3 tails, who became the guardian of Kiri. Mei was inaugurated as the Godaime Mizukage, and Naruto was officially adopted as her son and was a beloved figure in Kiri and all of Water Country, the newly christened Naruto Terumi, son of the Godaime Mizukage and her most trusted shinobi. Standing in his mother's new office, he smiled at her, his face masked down. She was signing some paperwork. She sighed. This is not what she envisioned 5 years earlier, but oh well. Hello Soki, I have a mission for you and Chojuro. I want Zabuza Momochi and his adopted daughter Haku Momochi back here in the mist unharmed. I want him to train and lead the next generation of the 7 swordsmen, she said, handing him a scroll for Zabuza. He nodded to her. It will be done. See you later, mother, he said. The 2 left, as she sighed, and made 2 shadow clones to help with the paperwork. Kakashi Hatake and his team, Sasuke Uchiha, Mito Namikaze and Sakura Haruno, were on the bridge deal with the demon of the mist and his daughter, the fake hunter Nin. Haha, this has been the most fun I've had in years, thank you for that, but now we must end this, Zabuza said darkly. But before anything, a mist appeared blocking everything. Zabuza Monochi, Kakashi Hatake, your battle is ended. Gato is on his way here with 1,000 men to kill you all and the bridge builder, a voice said as the mist was blown away. The duo saw 2 people in between them. What the hell, kid? Zabuza said, releasing his killing intent, which did nothing as Naruto unleashed his own, which matched it, surprising the Jonin. Look to your left, Gato is here and he wants you dead. Chojuro, get Haku and the Genin please unharmed, he said to his friend and teammate. Chojuro left as Gato and his men came up to them. Well now, what a failure this is. Too bad really, but at least I don't have to pay, you know, the midget cackled. So that is how it is, Zabuza said. He turned to the other 2, looks like our fight is over, he said. They nodded, but Naruto spoke, save your strength, I want him. I saw him trying to murder innocents and rape a young woman while her son watched. I hate vermin like that. Now then, he said as he made 2 clones appear. Kill them boys, bring me the girls alive, Gato cackled. The 3 made hand signs each before yelling out. Water style, water dragon. Fire style, great fireball. Wind release, great breakthrough. Each one firing off their jutsu before yelling in unison. Elemental release, boiling dragon, typhoon. As Chojuro brought the other backs, everyone with wide eyes watched in sheer shock as the fireball came into contact with the dragon and the water began to boil, finally the wind hitting it, and the dragon began rotating like a twister. With a roar it charged ahead and hit the men and Gato, boiling them alive. Screams of pain were heard as the steam grew thick, then all went silent. The steam disappeared and the corpses of the melted men were shown. The real Naruto turned to everyone as his clones went up to burn the bodies away. Zabuza Momochi, by order of the Godaime Mizukage, You are hereby reinstated as a Mist Shinobi in order to come home, you're missing me no longer, he said with a smile under his mask, handing the scroll to him. He took it and read it, his eyes bulged out of his head. Is this true? He asked. Naruto nodded and both he and Haku embraced in a hug and shouted they were free and could go home. The four then began heading to Kiri when Mito spoke. Wait, who are you? She asked. The four stopped and turned to look. I am Naruto Terumi, son of the Godayame Mizukage and the last Uzumaki of Kiri. The both Kakashi and Mito tensed when they heard that but left the other two confused. Mito narrowed her eyes at him, then it dawned on her, you're my brother, aren't you? Naruto, she said with venom. The other looked on shocked by this. They besides Kakashi never knew she had an older brother. He chuckled at her and began clapping. Very good Mito, it seems they trained you in brain power too. But no, I'm not your brother, he stopped existing long ago, he said in icy tone. They looked at him in shock, while Mito became enraged by his attitude as he took down his mask to show his face. You worthless baka, Dio, you know what you've done, our mother is worried sick about you and father has been looking all over, how could you do this to us? They were right, you are a failure, she screamed at him, taking deep breaths. He chuckled at first then shook his head. If anybody is the failure, it's your parents. They abandoned me, they stole my birthright and gave it to you. Besides, by Uzumaki law, we're not siblings anymore. Nice try though, he said as he turned and walked away. This shocked her teammates, but made her sensei frown. Sure, he fucked up, but he has been trying to fix it. Don't you dare turn your back to me. I am he, daughter of the Yondiame Chokage, older brother or not, you will show me respect, she bellowed as she charged at him, a Rasengan in hand. Naruto shined away and reappeared in front of Mito holding her arm and her neck. With a flick of his wrist he broke hers, lifting her up. Now listen here, child, you will never have my respect. You, your family and that worthless village look down on me like I was a disease. Next time you come at me, be prepared to die, he said quietly but with a darkness. He then punched her in the gut, knocking the wind out of her, tossing her back. She was caught by Kakashi, who held her as she coughed, caught her breath and began crying from the pain. Her teammates in shock ran up to her. Sasuke, who like her and felt family was the end all be all, gritted his teeth. She is your little sister, how could you be so cruel, bastard, he shouted. Not even looking back, Naruto spoke again, you don't have to blood to be family, and family is what you can make of. With that the four left back to Kiri. The four entered Mei's office where she was reading a book when the door opened and she saw her Sokiai with his mission alive and intact. She smiled, putting he put down. Hello Zabuza, Haku, she said warmly. Zabuza chuckled at his ex-love. I always knew you would become Kage, and I gotta say from the bottom of my heart, congrats Mei-chan, he said sincerely. She blushed a bit and nodded, thank you, well you're both ninja of the mist, and Zabuza, I want you to reform and lead the new 7 swordsmen, she stated. They all nodded. Excuse me, Mizukage-sama, I don't want to be a ninja, want to help in the hospital, if that is okay, the 15-year-old asked. Mei looked at her and nodded, yes I think you will, my Naruto here says your work with herbs and poisons matches Shizune Kato, the lady of poison herself, she stated. Naruto looked with a smile, this was his home, but frowned now. The leaf knew where he was but could do nothing as he was disowned in both tongue and paper. Minato was having a good day. He and Kushina were in the office when Kakashi came in without Mito. Where's Mito-chan? The Hokage asked. Kakashi sighed then spoke up, telling them about his mission. They were shocked how quickly it escalated. So Zabuza Momochi, huh? Well, I'm glad you all came back, but where is Mito? He asked again. She is in the hospital, a broken wrist and 2 broken ribs, the Jonin replied. Both parents gasped, then Minato became serious. What happened out there? He demanded. 2 members of the Mist came and retrieved Momochi and the hunter Nin. 1 killed both Gato and 1,000 of his men with 3 jutsus, 2 A-ranked, 1 B-ranked. He said his name was Naruto Terumi, son of the Godayame Mizukage. We also found out he is your missing son, he finished wearily. This was both earth-shattering and unbelievable, my Naruto. Kushina asked in a whisper. The Cyclops nodded. Mito discovered it and became belligerent, blaming him or what happened. When she didn't get a rise out of him, she attacked him, but he broke her wrist and ribs. and said the next time she tried something like that, he would kill her, he finished. Minato slumped back in his chair, his bangs covering his dull eyes. Kushina began sobbing into her hands. "Thank you team, your side dismissed," he said sullen. They nodded and left, neither said anything. It was not like they could go and get him, and they didn't know what to say, but hiding in the corner, Jiraiya stood. He sighed. This became much more complicated than he thought. "I guess it's only fair, we turned our backs on him, treated him like an inconvenience, and now it has come to bite us back." Minato said. He held his wife. "Oh Naruto-kun, I'm so sorry, I failed you," she whimpered. "Come darling, let's go visit Mito-chan," he said as they left, each trying to figure how to complete their broken family. Mito had finally woken up from her sleep to see she was in the hospital, her eyes focused, but her mind was in turmoil. She had been thinking about what Naruto said, and to a degree he was right. They had abandoned him, something she greatly fears. It made her angry though he beat her like an academy student, and he wasn't even trying. She looked at her right wrist to see it in a cast. It hurt too. Breath as well. Sad tears filled her eyes thinking back on how callous he is now, but then again it was her fault as well. She never took the time to get to know him. She had her parents and friends, but he had no one. She was taken from her thoughts when the door opened up and in came her parents and godparents. "Hello my little monsieur, how are you?" Kushina asked. Mito just shrugged, tired and in pain, she said softly. Kushina came and sat with her, her mother touching her beautiful blonde hair. "Sweetheart, what can you tell us about Naruto?" her father asked. She furrowed her brows thinking, he still looks the same hair, eyes, taller about 6 feet 3 inches. He holds himself in a style of apathy and takes risks. I also saw his left hand was gloved, but his right was not, and when he had my wrist in his hand it didn't feel like flesh. I think he has a prosthetic on, she said. Kushina gasped slightly while the others nodded. He also very powerful, and looks like he has an arsenal of jutsu. His killing intent easily matches the Kyuubi's without trying. This made them tense. Only Biju can match Biju, but even that takes effort. And when he killed Gato and his men he took pleasure in it, stating that he hates when men are pigs to women, and that's all I know, she said. They were all lost in thought. Kushina felt her heart break a little more. Her Sokei was a monster and it made her sad. She had failed him and he became a something dark. "Jiraiya-sensei, I'm gonna need more info on him. I need to know what my son has become," he said sadly. "From the sound of it, there is a slim to no chance of ever getting him back, especially if Mei Terumi is his mother now," he exclaimed. They all nodded at him. "I don't think we can bring him back. Once the village hears about Mito he'll be hated more than he was before. No, all we can do is apologize, but as of this moment, no attempt will be made to reach him. Let's leave him be and move on. We have done enough damage to him. Besides, we have something to tell you, Mito. You're gonna be a big sister," he said, changing the mood in the room, but the guilt still lingered, when all of a sudden her friends all came in to see her with their senseis. "Hi Mito-chan, we came to see how you are doing," Hinata stated. She smiled at them all. "I'm alright, just conflicted, I guess," she said them. "Why, what happened?" Ino asked her. "I met my older brother," she said, dropping a bomb on them. They all looked at in shock. "You have an older brother?" Kiba stated, as none of them knew she had an older brother. "That's what we said too when we found out. It was a shock to us as well," Sasuke said. She then went to explain what happened at the bridge, getting shocks from her friends, especially Lee, who frowned at Naruto's callousness. "Most unyouthful," he stated as the others agreed with him. "No, not really, he was justified a bit. We abandoned him, my parents took away his birthright, and we never included him in anything. Anyone would become bitter and angry for that," she said to them. "Doesn't matter, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us," Kiba stated. She smiled at him and nodded, "But know this, he is by far stronger than all of us, Itachi and Hana combined," she replied to them. Doubtful, I think we can and we will. We're the rookie 12, we're the best generation to come out of the leaf," Kiba boasted. Naruto was walking around Kiri, when he spotted Zabuza and Haku shopping for whatever. He decided to talk to them. "Hey you two," he called out to them. Haku blushed a bit, while Zabuza smirked at him. "Hey there brat, what's up?" he asked. "I just wanted to say, I give you my blessing with mom," just don't hurt her, okay? She is all I have in this world, gave me a reason to want to live again. All I ask is just don't hurt her, okay? He said sincerely. This took Zabuza and Haku aback a little, but they both saw how much he cared about her. I promise you, kid, on my honor as a member of the Seven Swordsmen, besides I couldn't anyways, I still love her, you know, she was the one good thing besides my Haku here, he said, petting his daughter's head, making her turn red. Naruto looked down and smiled. Thanks, Zabuza. If you ever need a sparring partner, I am fairly decent in swordplay, he said to the older shinobi. Zabuza nodded to him, offering his hand, to which Naruto took gladly. Haku smiled at this. Off near the distant side of a building, Mei was watching the whole thing. It made her happy to know her son cared so much, to know Zabuza still loved her. She bit her lower lip and disappeared. Later that night Naruto came home and got dinner started, making his mother's favorite food. He knew she was there, but he wanted to make sure she was taken care of. She meant the world to him. She was the first good thing to ever cross his path, and come hell or high water he would make sure she would stay safe. He heard the door open, as he set dinner. When he heard, "Ohayo Naruto-kun," it was his mother, and he smiled. "Ohayo, Ka-chan," he said from the dining room. She entered and saw the feast before her. His eyes went wide at her favorite food. "What's the special occasion?" she asked him as he seated her in her seat, then sat himself. "You already know, you were there, I just wanted to make sure." His intent was true. "Call me selfish, but I don't want you hurt, and I don't want to think about what I would do if I lost you," he said with smile. Listening to that made her heart swell. "How did I get so lucky with you, my baby boy? But you don't have to worry about me, I'll be okay. Zabuza was the only man in my life that treated me good. Besides that, I think Haku-chan has a crush on you," she said to him with a smirk. He looked at her with a raised eye. "Really?" he asked, surprised with a bit of confusion. She could only laugh at his innocent denseness. "Yes, sweetie, ever since you brought them back you're the only one she looks at with those eyes, and she blushes madly at you. You should give her a chance," she said to him, taking a few bites of her food. He thought about it. "Then you should make Zabuza sweat for it," he said, chuckling. "Oh sweetheart, you know it," she winked at him. Dinner ended, Naruto cleaned up the table and did the dishes, while Mei sat at the table watching him. She could smile at her son. Even after all these years, the idea of having a son still made her giddy. "Well, I'm going to bed. I love you, Ka-chan," he said to her. She got up and looked up at him, smiling at him. "My sweet little Naruto, you're so big now. Bringing you home with me was the best decision I ever made. I will always love you no matter where life takes you and no matter what obstacles come your way. You'll always be my baby boy," she said to him, embracing him in a hug. Him having to bend a little, breaking away, they both went to bed. Next morning Naruto got up early with a new vigor. "So Haku-chan likes me, huh? Nah, no girl ever liked me," he thought to himself as he made his way to a training ground. Since he was a chunin of the mist, it made it easy to train. As he got there he felt several life signs. He turned to see several sound nin, but they had slashes in their headbands. He looked at them and spoke. "What can I help you all with?" he asked. "Please, we need help. Our friend has been hurt badly. Help us or she dies," the female said, crying. "Okay, tell me your names and we'll go from there, okay? My mom is the Kage here," he said to them. "My name is Kintsuchi, Zuko Mime, Dosanochi. My friend's name is Tayuya Nomura. We were attacked by Orochimaru and his Sound 5, we were betrayed by him. Please help us," she begged in tears as Tayuya began moaning in pain. Naruto noticed her curse mark and growled, "Come, I'll take her, let's go to the hospital. It looks like you all need some help." Making a clone to take the downed girl, he got the others to the hospital, making another to get his mother. Once there, he found a couple nurses to help get Tayuya in a bed and began checking her over. It was discovered her curse mark was at fault, so he began to study it. "What are you doing, Naruto-kun?" Kin asked him. "I am examining the seal, and by the looks of it, I can get rid of it, but this is gonna hurt both of us. Do any of you have this mark?" he asked urgently. They shook their heads no, making him nod. "Okay, stand back because this will get bright," he said. He took his right hand and placed it on the seal. His hand began emitting a blue glow. So far nothing is happening. He then pushed chakra into it and it went from blue to a reddish purple color. Tayuya began moaning. He grit his teeth and began sweating. He opened his eyes, and they began changing from blue to purple with black circles in them. He added more chakra and the color became green. Now both were yelling in pain. He couldn't take it anymore, so he let go. Falling on his butt, his eyes bleeding and his breathing heavy, he sat there as his mother came in to see what was happening. Seeing her son on the floor, she helped him to a chair as the other three former sound nin kept their eyes on Tayuya, whose seal began shrinking till it disappeared entirely. Tired and sweaty, Tayuya passed out from the pain, but she was now out of the woods. What happened to her? Kin asked, worried for her friend. Doctors began to examine her, checking where the seal used to be, making sure her insides and vitals were okay and stable. With that seal gone, your friend here is okay. She just needs to rest and drink plenty of fluids, the doctor said, leaving them alone. Mei now placed her attention on her son, who had his eyes closed, still breathing heavy, felt her touch and opened his eyes. She gasped at him. What? What's wrong? He asked her. Grabbing a mirror, he looked to see the Rinnegan, he exclaimed. They were both in shock at this. Soon Naruto retracted the chakra and his eyes went back to normal. The pair then looked at the former sound nin and her eyes narrowed at Naruto. Explain, now, she said to him with tone. He sighed and explained everything to her. Once he was done, she sat there for a few minutes thinking it over, making the other three in the room nervously glance at each other. Finally she looked at them and smiled. How would you like to become Mist Ninja? She asked. They looked at her in shock for a moment, then Dosu spoke up. To be honest, Naruto has helped more than any else. Well, take it and give any info you require on Orochimaru and Oto, he said to her. She nodded to him, standing up. Welcome to Kiri, then all four of you. Inside Oto, the snake-son nin himself was busy drawing up plans to destroy Konoha. He has hated that village as long as he can remember, and now he will enjoy its destruction. Kabuto, is everything in place? He asked his second in command. Yes, my lord. All we need now is for you to speak to the Kazekage and well activate the plan, he said, bowing to his master. Orochimaru smirked. Excellent, soon the leaf will burn, kuku. Minato was in his office, looking at candidates for this year's Jonin exams. He had Enko Mitarashi, Genma Shiranui and Heiai Gecko, Hana Inuzuka and Itachi Uchiha, as well as a last-minute addition Niji Hyuga. These were three promising leaf nin, with recommendations Kurenai and Asuma. He smiled and approved them. He then thought about it. This year's would be like the Chunin exams, only the fighting will be a bit more brutal, as teams from all five great nations, 2 from the Leaf, 1 from Iwa, 1 from Kyomo and 1 from Suna plus 1 from Oto, 1 from Taki and 1 Kusa and finally 1 from Kiri. 29 competitors, it's gonna be quite the spectacle, but then he frowned. Naruto could be a part of this. It has been 6 years since has seen him, and to be honest he was not ready, and he knew his family wouldn't either. The village now knew he is alive and what he had done not only to Mito but to Gato and his enterprise, and like he suspected, the village was calling for his head, but they also feared him now as well. Flashback. Minato began rubbing his temples. He had a council meeting to go to now. Word had gone out about Kakashi's mission to Wave, angered by the fact this village's civilian council couldn't keep its mouth shut. Sighing to himself, when Nico appeared, Hokage-sama, the council ID waiting for you, she said. He nodded. Thank you. How did it come to this? Failing my oldest and turning him into a rival, he said aloud. He got up and Nico accompanied him. The closer he got, the more he heard yelling, and they could all tell it was from the civilians, and he opened the door. He was right, they were yelling at each other about his son. Releasing some killing intent, he shut them up. Now that the council is here, let's get started. Anyone interrupts me will be excused without warrant, he spoke with authority. They all quieted down. Now then, why are we here? He asked. The civilians spoke up, mainly Mabuki Haruno. We know that failure was at Wave Country and he hurt Mito-sama. We want his death. As compensation for this blasphemy, she spat with contempt. The other civilians clapping and applauding. No, Jiraiya said as he and Tsunade entered with very pissed looks. What do you mean no? The council women screeched. Jiraiya scowled at her. Be silent, women, this goes farther than any of you know, he said to them. The shinobi side looked intrigued. What do you mean? Shikaku asked. What I mean is I found out quite a bit about him. For starts, he is no failure, he is a prodigy, more so than even Itachi Uchiha. His mastery of seals exceeds mine, Minato's and Kushina's. he spoke. This earned gaps from the shinobi side, but the civilians were lost. What does that mean? One civilian councilman asked impatiently. It means that he is capable of not only fight even the most elite but he can even take on tailed beasts, the toad Sennin stated. Minato looked at his sensei in shock. What? That is why I am here. I made a discovery. When Naruto went to Kiri, he not only helped win the war for the rebels, but he killed Yagura and extracted the 3 tails from him, sealing it somewhere else. He is capable of fighting toe-to-toe with Biju, he said grimly. The whole council room went quiet. This was both startling and horrifying to say the least. Just how powerful is he? Kushina asked, utterly devastated by this revelation. Jiraiya looked at his daughter figure sadly. Quite powerful. He has both Minato's intelligence and patience while having Kushina's overactive mind and creativity. Combine that with his power, perseverance and the fact he is dangerous, well, he is not one you should underestimate, Jiraiya concluded. Plus he is the son of Mei Terumi the Godayame Mizukage. He you try to have him killed, she will declare war on us, and she is no an adversary we need. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, Minato said to them. They were all quiet. This was quite a thought they were lost in, but Minato ended the meet with one last thought though. Anbu, take the civilians to Ibiki and Enko. As they can't keep their mouths shut, then loosen their tongues. I want to know all their secrets and any other info they have, he said. The civilians began to shout and scream, but his route took them away for processing. Sarutobi and Danzo both died during the attack by the 9 tails. Good Danzo, the Hokage now has direct control over Root. Flashback ended. Well, we still have 6 months before the exams, he said as he went home to be with his family. At home was Mito, who was working on putting in elements into the Rasengan, while Kushina, who was now a month pregnant and showing signs, was eating some ramen while watching her daughter. Hello my loves, he said out loud to them, getting their attention. They both looked up and smiled brightly at him. Ohio, Minakoi/Tucson, they said. He walked over to them, kissing his wife first, then her swelling belly making her giggle, then he kissed his daughter's head. How are you both doing? He asked. I'm good Tucson, but I am trying to add elemental manipulation to your jutsu, she said. He smiled at her, rubbing her head. As he looked at his wife, the two gazed at each other lovingly. Since they had foregone trying to bring Naruto back, they focus on the children they have now and their marriage. I am good, little tired, but that goes with pregnancy, she said happily. Mito looked at her parents happily, but Naruto still haunted her thoughts. Her greatest regret, she should have done more, but maybe she could earn his forgiveness, and maybe, just maybe. Naruto sat meditating on the roof of the house. The exams were close at hand, and it was quiet in the house. He was not all that surprised when Zabuza asked Mei to marry him and she agreed to it. They tied the knot over a month ago and went on their honeymoon yesterday. He was happy for her as Zabuza was good for her and would be the best husband he could. The same could not be said for him. He and Haku talked for a while and she looked like she liked him, but after a couple dates she realized it was hero worship only and told him she would be his friend and sibling. Her and Chojuro hit it off as they had more in common and went steady. Tayuya and Kin discovered their feeling for each other and became a couple a month ago, with Zuko and Dosu found girlfriends on their own, one working at the hospital and the other reminded Naruto of Enko Mitarashi. Her love of blood could be a bit too much. He was bummed out but accepted it and moved on. No one ever felt that way about him anyways, so he had no reason to believe otherwise, and maybe it was for the best. He had other things to worry about anyways. Opening his eyes, he stood up and bit his thumb. Kuchios no Jutsu. Slamming his hand down, a giant ball of smoke appeared. He stood there waiting till the smoke dissipated. He saw his personal summon, a bluish-green dragon with purple slitted eyes. She was very beautiful and held a certain air of elegance, and she loved her summoner. To Naruto she was his baby. When he got the contract from Uzushio, and was sent to the dragon's homeland, he was given her as a reward, as he was the first in over 100 years to be the summoner, and he raised her from a hatchling. He named her Edolana, Anna for short. The second their eyes met she smiled at him. Her parents had been killed after she was born by a joint effort of other summons to wipe out the dragons. He was the closest thing to a parent she had. Hello, Papa, she said in smooth voice that had more mid and higher range. Hello Anna, how are you? He asked her. He walked up and hugged her. She was a bit bigger than him now, as dragons grow faster than humans. She was about 7 to 8 feet tall and about 10 feet in length with a pair of beautiful bluish-red wings. "Sorry, I haven't seen you in a couple weeks. I've been busy with some personal things, but now that you're here, I wanted to see if you wanted to train with me some more, finish where we left off last time," he asked. She excitedly said yes. Even with her elegance, she was still a child, so she got excited about a lot of things. Naruto chuckled, and they headed back to the dragon's home. The world of the dragons was a beautiful place, filled with floating plateau, many different colorful plants and animals, and huge village for dragonkind with a council of the mightiest dragons ruling them. On the council sat Igneel the Fire King, Grandini the Sky Queen, Wislogia the Light King, Skiadrum the Shadow Lord, Metallicana the Steel Empress, and Lucian King of Lightning. At the head is Agnologia Emperor of Dragonkind. Together these 7 help rule and maintain the balance for all dragons. Today they sit in the council room and speak about their first summoner in over 100 years, Naruto Uzumaki Tsurumi. "What shall we teach the boy?" Igneel said, the first to speak. "I say we teach him how to use our power. He has shown great strength and prowess," Metallicana said out loud before she began chomping on food. They all looked at each other and nodded. "I think that is an excellent idea. The boy has a good heart and he cares for us dragons. Let us repay his kindness in stride," replied Agnologia. Before any more could be spoken, the door came open and in came Edelana and Naruto. "Ah, speak of the devil himself. Hello again, Naruto. What brings you here?" Skiadrum asked. "Well, besides wanting to come by and say hi, I was hoping you could train me. I have an exam coming up and I want to be ready for it," he said to them. "Yes, the Jonin exams in your former home, the Leaf Village. Yes, I think we could help with that," Agnologia proclaimed. He smiled at the old formerly evil dragon. "Thank you, I won't let you down," he stated with sincerity. They all chuckled at him and began getting to work. The Chunin who were taking the exams were in the Hokage's office speaking to the Yandere. "As you know, you 6 have been chosen to take part in the Jonin exams. You will be competing against over 20 other competitors as well as Kiri's Chunin," he said to them. They looked at him and nodded in understanding as the Jonin stood on the sides, but one thing confused them. "Excuse me, Hokage-sama, but why did you emphasize on Kiri?" Kurinai asked as she saw still new to a lot of this. "Because it was discovered by Kakashi and my daughter Mito that Naruto is a Chunin in Kiri, and not only that but he is the son of Mei Terumi the Godayame Mizukage," he said to them. This got gasps from them all. Other just widened their eyes. "But wait, wasn't Naruto considered a failure?" Anko asked him. He winced at that, while Kakashi put his head down in shame. "It was thought that, but from what was told to me during the mission by Kakashi, he is a prodigy. He created the first ever unison raid with only 2 clones taking out 1,000 men. The only other people to do that were Lords First and Second during the First Shinobi War," he said grimly. The room went silent. People were staring at their Hokage like he was crazy. "What's unison raid?" Kurinai asked as she and several other had never heard of a technique. A unison raid is where you combine 2 or more attacks in perfect symmetry. From what Kakashi told me, Naruto used 3 attack: fire, water and wind, he said as Kakashi spoke up. "When we watched him on the bridge, he made a water dragon, fireball and the great breakthrough. The fireball hit the water, heating up the dragon, boiling the water, then the wind it and turned it into a twister. They called the move elemental release, boiling dragon typhoon. They made them all very nervous. If he was this strong now, he would be a hard enemy to face." The competitors were beginning to sweat. Even Anko became nervous. "Also, he is well versed in Fuinjutsu like me, Jiraiya and Kushina," he said as an afterthought. He dismissed them all and they went to get lunch and speak. "Is this kid really all that?" Anko asked, biting into some dango. "Yes, he is as old as Itachi, but unlike him does not go the path of least resistance. He is dangerous. He could have killed Mito when she challenged him, and he wouldn't have batted an eye. You all need to be careful around him, because his aura rivals the Nine Tails," Kakashi said before going to read his smut. That last part got to them. His power and aura rivals the Nine Tails. They didn't really talk after that as they began to prepare for the exams, this time with fear. Mito was with her mother at home reading up on some old Fuinjutsu while Kushina laid down on the couch to take a nap. Now that she was pregnant again and in her early 30s, it took more out of her than her first 2. Mito was lost in thought. If she could beat Naruto, maybe she could get him to accept her apology as well as their parents. It was her only bet right now. She needed to at least say her piece to him. She nodded and wrote a note to her mother saying she was going out to train and left the house. On her way there she encountered her friends, the other rookies, who were at an Akamichi-owned barbecue shop. She headed to see them. "Hey guys," she called out. They looked up to her, either saying hi or nodding, while Sasuke just grunted. "What are you doing?" Hinata asked. "I'm going to train. When the time comes I want to face Naruto and beat him and make him listen to reason," she stated. They all stopped and looked at her. "What? Why, he almost killed you last time," Sakura stated with a frown. She looked down with a sad smile. "I know, but I want a chance to make things right. I want my Oniai-chan back. When we were little he would play with me once, and while if my parents were busy, he made sure I was okay, and I want to apologize for abandoning him. Sniff, I miss him. I know he hates this village and my family, but I still love him," she said, sincerely pouring her heart to them with a few stray tears in her eyes, the guilt eating at her. They sat there quietly looking at her. They all thought it over and decided to try and help her. "If that is what you want, then I'll help you." Hinata said she wasn't pleased that her older brother tried to kill her, but she was still her friend. "Yeah, well, help you too. At least you can get closure this time," Shikamaru stated. One by one they all agreed to help, making her smile. She nodded to them. "Thank you all." Kushina had woken up from her rather restless nap. She felt okay, so she went to get dinner started, but when she got there she saw Minato making it. It made her smile at his thoughtfulness, so she sat down at the table. "Have you seen Mito-chan, honey?" she asked him. "Yeah, she went to train with the other rookies. With the Jonin exams coming up they wanted to step up their game, so it will just be us for dinner tonight," he said to her, coming to kiss her softly, then her stomach as well, which made her giggle. He then sighed as he didn't want to tell her this. "Kiri is bringing one team and Naruto is on that team. Will you be okay?" he asked her in concern. She smiled sadly at him. It still crushed her how she had failed as a parent for her oldest. She nodded to him. "Yes, I don't have much choice. But it doesn't make the hurt lessen," she said. Being pregnant, her hormones were out of whack. She laid on his shoulder as she whimpered quietly. She wanted nothing more than to make it up to him. Hopefully when he came they could talk to him and make amends. They knew they would never be a family again, but they still had to try. Raza, the Yandere Kazekage, was laying down in a ditch, being watched over by Orochimaru. One part of his plan worked now. All he needed was to convince Suna to attack Konoha. Several of the others' villages had gotten their chunnin ready as well, so now it was a matter of waiting till it was time. 6 months had passed and now it was time. A few things had changed in Kiri. Haku was now engaged to Chojuro. They were madly in love, and everyone was excited for this, except Naruto. Poor boy had been dealt another shitty hand again. May had been putting him on the back burner, not really making time for him. She was busy not only getting Kiri ready for the exams but getting Haku and Chojuro ready for their wedding, as well as Zabuza, who was spending more time with Haku, building their already strong bond. Naruto saw this and tried to see May to make it didn't happen again, but she pushed him off to the side, not so much neglecting like his first family, but it still felt like it, so he just excluded himself from them. We can find him in his apartment getting ready for exams, seeing all who would be there and making his strategy. He sighed. This being left out in the shit is beyond old now, he said to himself. He looked up at his calendar. In 3 days' time he would be competing to become a Jonin, but to be honest he didn't really care. If this kept up it wouldn't make a difference to him anymore, and if this kept up he would resign from Kiri and disappear from the elemental nations. Looking down at his folders, he had enough. He got cleaned up, ate and went to bed. He as of right now was the strongest shinobi in this world, but he felt more alone than ever, and for a brief moment he felt tired. Laying down in bed he went into a dreamless sleep. Time skipped to the exam. Standing in the Mizukage office, while Haku and Chojuro were excited, Naruto simply was stoic, not really caring anymore, but you could see the hurt in his eyes if you really looked. "Alright you three, this is the same as the Genin exams. Make Kiri proud as we are of you," May said with a smile. They nodded to her, one less enthused. She dismissed them as Haku and Chojuro came up to her and Zabuza to talk and such, none of them sparing a glance at Naruto. He looked down, a lump in his throat, tears threatening to appear, so he shined away. He sat down on his couch and began to cry. "So that is how it is now, huh?" he said out loud, his voice cracking. His breathing labored as he was trying to calm down, but he couldn't. 6 years down the drain, did she really care, or was he just a phase? Maybe he was just a stepping stone. That bitter feeling came back again. Someone must have hated him something fierce. It doesn't matter, no one ever loved me anyways, so fuck it all, fuck this world and fuck everything they stand for, once alone, always alone, he said. His eyes dulled to a blue-gray color. As of now he was just another worthless orphan, and maybe it was better to stay that. Hopes and dreams were foolish ideas for him. He packed up, putting on a black sleeveless shirt and face mask, green pants, his blue battle coat taping up his ankles and shins and right arm at the elbows with red tape, and his black gloves. After getting ready he headed out to the front gates and sat down waiting for them. He didn't wait long as the others appeared. He glanced and began walking ahead. Not once did they spare him a glance, as they were wrapped up in the wedding and May unannounced pregnancy, all of which Naruto heard. It made his heart sink that the women he thought as his mother turned her back to him for her new family. He glared ahead as jealously reared its head, sighing to himself. He shook it off. He wouldn't go that route. If they did want him around anymore, then I guess it's time to say goodbye. Rather fucked up way, but still. He continued on as they were 5 feet behind him. Mei and Zabuza were speaking to Haku. So you excited, kid? Zabuza asked his daughter. She blushed and nodded, holding Chojiro's hand. She looked down at her ring and she still couldn't believe it. She was getting married. Any thoughts of Naruto had been forgotten about. They had tunnel vision now. They didn't stop to see if he was there or not. He had simply become a victim of circumstance yet again. Making impressive time, they had entered Fire Country when they stopped to make camp, but to their surprise it was already made for them, 2 tents and all. They looked up and saw Naruto sitting there staring off into space, but thought nothing of it and went about their business, the reality no clicking with them. He didn't need to see to know, his eyes glistening in the dying sunlight. They had left him behind just like his biological family had. He knew then he would resign after these exams. Win or lose, it didn't matter to him anymore. They didn't matter to him anymore. He was done with this life. The group of 5 made it to Konoha. Walking on the path they made it to the gate when the gate guards stopped them. Halt, I need to see your passports and reason for coming, one on the right said. I am Mei Terumi and we're here for the Jonin exams, she said proudly. He looked at them all, and nodded, never realizing that was Naruto standing behind them all. He stamped the passports and they headed out into the village. Naruto put his hood up as he didn't want to be seen or spoken to, as they made their way to the stadium, passing by people from other lands, even samurai as well. The 4 from Kiri looked on with wonder and excitement. Naruto was reminded just how much hated this place, how much he hates people. Entering the stadium, Mei and Zabuza headed up to the Kage box, while the other 3 headed to the competitors' box. Naruto walked behind his teammates as they made their way in, finding seats in front while Naruto stood off to the sides. He didn't feel like a Kiri nin anymore, so no point in trying. He glanced around, seeing nin from Iwa, Kyomo, Kusa, Oto, and others. He saw Baki, Pakura and Mimoto of Suna, then saw 2 teams from the Leaf as well. He closed his eyes and just listened, letting his sensory skills out. Minato walked up to the podium and began talking, giving the usual speech, which most ignored. Naruto did notice a bunch of Anbu posted, which means something big is happening. Now then, this year we're gonna change it up a bit. Instead of preliminaries, we're just gonna get straight to the battles, he said, getting cheers from the crowds. Naruto sighed at this. Good, at least I won't have to deal with them, he thought to himself. First up we have Mimoto of Suna versus Ashara and Igari of Kusa, Genma Shiramura yelled out. The 2 competitors head down and fight began. Time skip. The first fight ended in a draw, while 3 other fight with shinobi from Iwa, Kimo and Taki. Either one have lost, but most fights were very well received. Kage box. Wow, what spectacular performance, these ninja are very impressive, Mabui said as she sat next to I. Indeed they are. Anoki replied. Competitors. The latest fight ended, with Pakura winning again, a female aim shinobi. Next fight will be Haku Momochi against Hana Inuzuka. She got up, kissing her lover, and headed out to the arena. She looked over and saw Naruto not paying attention to anything, but what made do a double take was his eyes. They were hollow and lifeless. She could see major depression in his face. but she turned her attention back to the arena. Kage box. That's my girl, Zabuza said with a smirk. Mei giggled as to her husband and watched her stepdaughter walk out onto the field. Meanwhile Minato and Kushina sat there, nervously. They hadn't seen Naruto in years and couldn't wait to see his power. Mito and her friends sat in the audience with the clans, watching as the elder Inuzuka was about to fight the daughter of the Mizukage. Go Hana-chan, kick her ass, Tsume yelled. Neither opponent said a word when the sound was heard. They dashed at each other, kunai in hand to get a feel for each other, throwing punches and kicks for good measure. The crowd went wild for this, cheering and whistling and clapping, as the two went back at it. Fong over Fong, she yelled out. Her three partner became clones of her and began Hijutsu. Haku, looking at her options, used her bloodline. Hayatan, Demon's Mirror Jutsu, she quickly said. Several mirrors popped up from the ground and locked Hana in place. Several shouts were heard and the mirrors disappeared. To see Hana and her partners passed out on the ground looking disheveled. Winner, Haku Momochi. The crowd cheered and applauded her performance as she went up back to her seat. When she got air, she noticed Naruto wasn't there. She looked all over, but he was not there. Thinking he had gone to the restroom or something, she let it go, but his eyes still haunted her. Your daughter is very well trained, Minato said to Mei and Zabuza. Thank you, she is just a superb shinobi, Mei beamed. Yes, she seems quite capable, indeed. Kushina replied in kind. Finally getting to her seat, Haku spoke to Chojuro. Have you seen Naruto? She asked him. He looked at her thoughtfully, then his eyes widened. No, I haven't seen him at all. He looked down. I haven't spoken to him in 6 months, he said as reality hit him. Haku looked down as well. It hit her too. They were family and she turned her back on him too. Oh Kami, we abandoned him, she said quietly, horror etched on her face. They got up and began looking for him. Naruto was on top of the tower overhead. He watched he fights. He had seen both Chojuro and Haku win, but honestly this didn't matter to him. His second family had turned their backs, it had shattered his heart, and he had lost his will to care anymore. Can I get Itachi Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki to the arena floor please? The stadium went quiet as the former son of the Yandere was called. Minato and Kushina held their breaths in anticipation, wanting to see the son they had forsaken. At the same time Mei and Zabuza were confused by this. Then it hit her and she gasped. What's wrong? Zabuza asked his pregnant wife. She looked at him in horror, her eyes wide. I never finished the name change, I never officially adopted him, Zabuza. We haven't spent time with him in nearly a year. We were so busy with Haku and Chojuro. Oh Kami, I did the one thing I promised I'd never do. I abandoned my son, she said, the realization hitting her like a bomb and the look of utter devastation plastered on her face. Whether it was luck of not no one beside the Kazekage, Orochimaru, had hears this and knew he had been abandoned by Minato and Kushina as well. Oh, this is too good, to be left behind by two families. Maybe if I break him he'll join me, he thought to himself, trying to not lick his lips. Mito and her friends in the audience sat there as Itachi walked out onto the floor with fangirls screaming out his name and ogling him. Wow, your brother is popular, Sasuke. Hinata stated. He looked down. I know drives the family nuts, he said, making them laugh. Once Itachi was down there, he stood waiting for a few moments when a slight colored wind appeared about 10 feet in front of him. A man about 2 feet, 6 feet 5 inches, taller than Itachi, 6 feet 3 inches, appeared, and his appearance was shocking. Wearing green pants taped off with red tape, black closed-toes shinobi shoes, with a black sleeveless shirt which showed his muscles quite well underneath, his right arm was bandaged at the elbow with a black glove on, his left arm he tore off the bandages showing his mechanical arm, think of Gildarts from Fairy Tail, with a black glove, a black face mask and blue hood. Many in the audience were in shock. This was the former son of their beloved Yandere, the one everybody thought would be a failure. Many girls were blushing at his physique, as were some of the boys, while others looked at his mechanical arm wondering how he got it. Up in the box, Minato and Kushina looked at the figure of their son with shock, awe, fear and sadness. Why does Naruto have that arm? Kushina asked. Mei looked at her, ashamed of herself as she spoke. During the Civil War, he won that arm fighting against Yagura, while he was in his stage 1 Biju cloak form, she said softly, looking at her son with sadness and disgust in herself. The other Kage looked at Mei in utter shock and disbelief, but turned back to him as he spoke. "Itachi," Naruto said, trying to be friendly but not really feeling it. The Uchiha nodded at him and gave him a ghost smile, which shocked some spectators. "Naruto, been a long time," he replied in his monotone voice. "I heard you got married to Izumi, congrats by the way," he said. Itachi nodded. "Yes, thank you for introducing us," he said sincerely to him. All the while everyone was shocked. Itachi and Naruto had been friends. This was new to them all, except for Itachi's wife, who looked sadly at Naruto. Mito looked at Sasuke. "I didn't know my brother is the reason yours is married now," she said. He looked at her just as confused. "I didn't either. Itachi never really told us how he and Izumi got together," he replied to her. "Ah, that's so sweet," Ino said, slightly blushing, as did Tenten. "Why did you leave Naruto?" Itachi asked him. This is what everyone wanted to know. They couldn't understand why he left to begin with, but now they were gonna hear his reason why. Naruto looked at the ground for a moment, then spoke. "In the Uzumaki clan's customs there is a well-known law that states, should the oldest heir be unable to or is deemed unworthy of said title, he or she is stripped of their title and is henceforth disowned by the clan. When they made Mito the heir, they had essentially thrown me out on my ass, so that is one reason why I left," he said to him calmly. In this story, the Uzumaki are the only clan in Konoha with this law. Everyone who knew of the Uzumaki were shocked to hear this, as they valued family above all else. "Did you know about this, Kakashi?" Kurenai asked. He looked down in shame. "Yes, we did. The reason they did this was because they were ashamed of Naruto, as he was considered weak and was not worthy of his title," he said, looking now. It was foolish of him to think that. The others looked at him with both horror and sadness. It really showed the Uzumaki in a new light. Kushina, having forgotten that, began to shake. "How could I forget such a thing?" she whispered as tears pooled from her eyes. "We willingly threw our baby boy out into the cold without a second thought," she said with a heartbroken tone now shaking. Itachi looked at him with wide eyes. It was more cruel than some of the Uchiha laws. "Don't you fucking pity me? I don't need it. I am only here to fight you. Now come at me, Uchiha," he said monotoned. Itachi nodded and made the first move with impressive speed. He threw a punch at Naruto, but he caught it as the impact made dust fly around them. Everyone sat in anticipation. Fugaku and Mikoto sat on the edge of their seat, learning that Itachi had befriended the little boy no one wanted, learning Naruto had helped Itachi find his soulmate, and now they were battling. When the dust cleared, Itachi and Naruto were at a standstill, neither moving or giving ground. "Impressive," was all Itachi said. He moved away and sped off, Naruto doing the same. Everyone watched as this fight intensified. Moving at Kage speeds, the two combatants threw punches and kicks at each other. Itachi would throw a punch, Naruto would block it and fire of a kick, as Itachi would block as well. It was a roundabout process, but their taijutsu was beyond amazing. The rookies sat there with their jaws dropped watching this take place, their eyes never leaving the field. Quick as lightning they moved, as both combatants flew to the other sides of the arena. Fire style, fireball, jutsu. Water style, hydrosphere. Itachi blew the fireball at Naruto. Naruto waited till the last minute and formed a ball of water, catching the fireball, making the water boil. Naruto then threw it back at Itachi, but he dodged it, thankfully only to see Naruto right in front of him, his fist cocked back and it connecting with his face, sending him careening into the wall. The audience looked on in shock as the Uchiha's prodigy was being beaten by the disowned son of their Kage. Soon cheering began as the crowd was getting pumped up. "The flames of youth burn bright today," Guy said. Sasuke watched on and couldn't believe it. Itachi was taking a beating. He looked over at Mito, who was shocked as he was. Turning his head, he saw his friends and senseis were in the same boat. "He caught that fireball?" Fugaku said in disbelief. Mikoto looked on sadly at Naruto. He held himself like a man who did not care if he lived or died. He carried himself like a man who lost his will. She looked down at her newborn Sayuri as she slept in her arms. The thought of abandoning a child, her own no less, made her sick to think about. She looked back up at her friend in the Kage box. She was in tears, and judging by the look she saw the same thing. "I'm so sorry, Kushi-chan, but you brought this on yourself," she thought to herself with a stray tear in her eye. Mito had seen her big brother and he was not the same person that he was in Wave. She didn't know what it was, but he was different. Naruto looked at Itachi who was beginning to pant while the stamina monster he was fine, he was over this and did not intend to win anyways. Is this all you have, Itachi? I'm disappointed in you. Come, Rookie of the Year, fight me, he taunted, hoping it worked. Itachi glared at Naruto activating his Sharingan. He may have been courteous to each other but he would not tolerate this. He ran again at him and began another bout of taijutsu, but to his and the entire stadium's shock he continued to counter and block. The Kage could only watch in pure shock at this. What the hell I am seeing? I asked, rubbing his eyes. You're not the only one. Not only does he have the balls to taunt the Uchiha but could back it up. Inoki said as his granddaughter sat next to him in utter shock. Mei looked at him in shock. He was never this cruel before, but now he probably doesn't care anymore. She looked at in tears, her heart breaking at what she has done to her son, the one who saved not only her but her village, gave her her husband, and how does she repay him? Tossing him away like trash. Please forgive me, sweetie, I should have done better, I'm sorry, she thought as Zabuza looked down sadly as well. He had done the same and not even spared a glance to his suffering. He looked at Mei, then her belly, and steeled himself. When this is over, we're coming to save you. This should never have come to pass, he thought, angry at himself. Kushina and Minato saw that look before in his eyes years earlier when Mito was born. It tore at their hearts to see it now, only this time much deeper. He was damaged, but hopefully not beyond repair. Itachi took a minute to catch his breath. Something is wrong with you, I can see it in your eyes and feel it in your aura, he stated to him. Naruto gave him a sad, bitter smile, but no one could see it behind his face mask. Until you have walked in the shadows of the lonely places in this world, until you have seen despair in person and have lost your will, you can never truly understand, and to be honest I hope you never have too, Naruto said to him. Everyone listening was quite trying to understand and decipher what he meant, while Mito, her parents, Mei, Zabuza, Haku and Chojuro knew, as the two had stood in a hallway watching him, they knew what he meant. Itachi tiled his head in confusion. What do you mean? He asked. Naruto's eyes began to glisten, shocking everyone who saw. It means that I was never meant to have a family, a mother who loves me, a father who cared, siblings who wanted to be around me. It means that I am tired, I hate this world, I hate my life and I hate being alive, he said, swallowing the lump in his throat. It was quiet, no one dared utter a word, his true feelings had been uttered to the world, this is what he felt, and this broke several people's hearts. Mito sat there in utter shock, tears began streaming out of her eyes. Big brother, that's not true, I love you, she whispered. Her friends, having heard it, looked at her with sympathy, as did the senseis. Haku and Chojuro just stood there, not moving or breathing. No, Naruto, I care, please forgive me, she said to no one as she began to shake. Mei, Zabuza, Minato and Kushina looked like their worlds had crumbled down on them. No, sweetheart, don't say that, I was the failure, not you, don't think like that, Kushina said, now sobbing. Mei had covered her mouth with her hands, looked at the boy she raised and loved. It tore at her heart for him to say that. Naruto-kun, I'm sorry, I never meant to hurt you like that, she whispered. Tsunade and Jiraiya had come up next to them, having seen and heard it all, looked at him sadly as well. Come at me, Itachi, show me why you are the Uchiha's prodigy, show me your power, or fall in front of your family, he said darkly. Closing his eyes, pushing chakra into them, and when he opened them up he unveiled his Jujutsu, the Rinnegan. In the Kage's box the leaders gasped at the sight. You mean to tell me he has the Rinnegan? I yelled in shock as he sat up from his chair as Mabui looked on-eyed, wiping away her tears. Inoki just sat there looking on, his face pale. This is the first time I have ever seen the eyes of God, he said out loud. Minato and Kushina were shocked by this. Naru-chan, she yelled out absent-mindedly. Minato looked back at Jiraiya and Tsunade, who looked like they had seen a ghost. Sensei? He asked. I have only one other pair of eyes like his, but he died years ago. Naruto has the power of life and death, he stated to himself. Mito and the other looked on with confusion. What's that? I thought the Sharingan and Byakugan were the only Jujutsu. Sasuke said aloud. Fugaku, Mikoto as well the entire Uchiha clan looked on unable to comprehend what they're seeing, and it wasn't much better for the Hyuga either as Hayashi looked on slack-jawed, his wife Hayanite and their youngest Hanabi sat there watching as well, but Hanabi was confused. "Ka-chan, what's that?" she asked her mama. But her father spoke instead. "That is the Rinnegan, the first Jujutsu. Legend says that the Sharingan and the Byakugan originated from those eyes when the Rikudo Sannin had sons," he said to her. Itachi, who was just as surprised as the others, looked on as well. "You Uchiha, and you Hyuga think your eyes are the end-all be-all, you who have never had to walk in the shadows alone, who have never faced despair as you slowly lose your faith and hope, your curse of hated and hubris of arrogance, it pales in comparison to the solitude of hopelessness. I have lost my light, I had let go of the hope that was never mine. You have no idea what it's like to wake up and hate yourself, to go to sleep and pray to a god that doesn't exist, to just close your eyes and not wake up again," he said coldly, his glare burning into all who saw it. "I haven't wanted to live since I was 5 years old, and for a brief moment in time a woman filled that emptiness and took away my pain. But as usual nothing good ever lasts, for me," he said calmly, looking straight into Itachi's eyes. Kurenai could only shake her head in disappointment hearing this. Enko actually began tearing up listening. He vanished from sight for a moment, but it was enough as he kicked Itachi in the side, sending him into the wall. Wasting no time he charged at him, again, but Itachi recovered quickly. Seeing his foe before him, he tapped into his full power. All of a sudden a purple-colored rib cage formed around him, with 2 arms, swinging on of them at Naruto it connected, sending into the other side's wall. You could hear its stone crack as his body pushed against it. Naruto got up, bloody this time, and no smile, no show of any emotion, just a blank stare with dead, hollow eyes. He made 2 clone, and each began the hand signs of Unison Ray Jutsu. The audiences went from cheering to fear. This wasn't an exam battle anymore, this was a fight to the death. Many had a hard time looking away. Mito, who was in tears, while Sasuke was gritting his teeth, looked on. Both had fear in their eyes. "Oniai-chan, please stop this," she yelled, but couldn't do anything as she was being held back by Kiba, Lee and Choji. Fugaku activated his eyes as Mikoto watched in fear for her oldest son's life. Mei watched in horror at what Naruto was doing. "Why?" was all she could say as she began sobbing as well. Kushina, who was a hot mess, looked through tears at what her baby had become, what she helped make him become. "Please Naru-chan, don't do it," she begged. But Minato saw something else. He wasn't going to hurt Itachi. His eyes widened at the revelation and began running down there to stop the fight. Itachi saw what was happening and, not thinking, made 3 hand signs and his left hand glowed with lightning. He charged at Naruto. "Please forgive me, my friend," he thought as he went full steam ahead. Naruto had seen this and smiled. His time was done here anyways. He dismissed the clones and the jutsus just as Itachi punched through his chest, hitting his heart. The 2 combatants stood there looking at each other. Itachi had a look of shock while Naruto had a genuine smile on his face. He felt at peace. Taking down the mask, he began to cough up blood as Itachi pulled out his hand. The whole stadium went quiet, all looking at the 2 in the ring. Shock and disbelief were all over. Mito looked on in horror at seeing her big brother impaled. Tears flowed from her eyes. As the other rookies stood there watching, Choji lost his lunch, Sakura and Ino went pale, and Kiba had to turn away. Fugaku and Mikoto watched with horror etched on their faces. Mikoto began shaking as a hand went to her mouth. Itachi just killed her best friend's oldest. Kushina and Mei just sat there, they could hear nothing. They felt numb, all they could see was their son with a hole in his chest where his heart used to be. They began shaking as Zabuza went to Mei and Tsunade went to Kushina. It didn't feel real to them. This wasn't happening. Naruto, who had a genuine smile on his face, fell back with a loud thud as screams were heard and people were crying or stunned silent. Minato had finally come down, raced to his son. "Naruto," he yelled out. But Naruto heard nothing as all went black and silent. Itachi looked at Naruto, then at his hand, and he realized what was happening, and he felt like he did after his first kill. He went pale as his wife and mother came running to him to comfort him. Kushina felt reality hit her and she broke down. She had watched her baby boy die in front of her and she couldn't take it anymore. Mei, thinking about the last 6 months and how she had tossed him aside, now she would never get the chance to apologize to him. Her first son was dead right in front of her, it hurt and she couldn't stop crying. Mito just cried into her friends, she had wanted so badly to apologize to him, but now he was gone. She was angry at Itachi, she wanted to hurt him, she began fighting out their grasps but went numb and blacked out. Kakashi knocked her out. It wasn't Itachi's fault, Naruto had set him up to do so. Gray clouds appeared and it began to rain, as if the heavens wept for him. Kushina and Mei had made it down and were crying over his body. Haku and Chojuro were in a state of confusion and shock, he was dead. No, this wasn't supposed to happen. Please let this be a dream, Haku begged as it hit her too, falling to her knees. In the morgue laid Naruto's body. Behind the glass was both his former families as well as the Uchihas. No one there could believe it, they didn't want to believe it. It's my fault, I should have never pushed him away, it was not fair to him. Oh Naruto, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Mei said as she sobbed into Zabuza. Kushina could only look at him. Some mother I turned out to be, I forced you to face all this alone, I ruined your childhood and threw you away. Oh sweetie, I'm sorry, please come back, she begged as more tears fell. Itachi, it wasn't your fault, he set you up to kill him, Minato said sullen as he looked at Itachi. The Uchihas looked at him as did the others. What do you mean, Tucson? Mito asked, still weeping. Minato ran a hand through his hair. When Naruto was saying all hat stiff there was no malice behind it, he said that to make you act. I saw he look in his eyes, he had lost his will to live. In truth we all killed him, we broke him, tossed him away like trash, his heart simply stopped beating, he said trying to not to cry. Mito looked at his body, I'm sorry, big brother, I'm so sorry. Please don't leave me behind, don't leave Mito, she begged him, but he would never answer. Haku looked at her and felt the same, she reached out embracing Mito who sobbed out in pain, the others looked at her with heartbreak in their eyes. Mikoto began crying hearing that. So ends a broken soul, who deserved more than was given, Kakashi said bowing his head. Orochimaru's frozen corpse was being dragged to Tenzuka town where a local bounty hunter office was. Opening the door, he guy at the desk looked up to see the Sannin in shock. He looked at the man bringing him. Hello sir, how can I help you? He asked. The man pulled down his hood and mask. I would like his bounty, please, the man asked. Okay, then name please so I can put you in our registry, he said. Naruto Uzumaki. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed this what if and want to see next part of it, comment down below and let me know. Also share this video with your friends. See you in the next video. Peace.